Alright, so recently the long-awaited retheme of Splash Mountain finally opened at the Magic Kingdom. To promote the ride, Disney filmed a POV video for YouTube, and sadly, it wasn't a great video. Of course, when it comes to theme park rides, a video can only cover so much of the actual ride experience. But of course, Disney adults are hardcore pearl-clutching at the sight of the new ride. All I ask is that you actually listen to my arguments before commenting, because trust me, I'll know if you didn't listen to what I say here. Without any further delay, I'll be making a mild defense of Tiana's Bayou adventure. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is why Splash Mountain got rethemed in the first place. I think it goes without saying that Song of the South was a PR disaster of a film. Now, I know that me just saying that will cause people to come up with whatever excuse they want, anything ranging from the supposed erasure of a black actor to the film being far less problematic than some other films with their botched messaging. But the simple fact of the matter is it's just not a good look. Ignore the contents of both the film and the ride for just a second and think about this. If you googled what was the theme of Splash Mountain, you'd find information on Song of the South. Does Disney want one of the most popular rides being tied to a film that's infamous as their most racist movie? I'm not even saying it is their most racist movie because frankly, it's not. But the fact of the matter is that society as a whole believes that to be the truth. If that's the case, what would you do if you were in charge of things over at Disney? Double down on an irrelevant film aside from its infamy as a problematic piece of Disney history? Or just scrap that theme since most normal people just don't give a shit? What I'm trying to hammer home is that the content of the film and the ride are irrelevant to the conversation of why Disney replaced Splash Mountain. What is relevant is the perception society has against the film. Be angry or don't be angry. I don't care, just don't be an imbecile. So I'd like to discuss the silliest criticism I've been hearing since long before Splash Mountain even closed its gates, the theming of the Bayou and Frontierland. The supposed Western-themed land. I think it's fair to call this criticism what it is, just plain asinine. By this very logic, it doesn't make sense to have Splash Mountain as part of Frontierland to begin with, since Song of the South takes place in, well, the South, specifically the state of Georgia, which is certainly not part of the West. People have made some weird arguments like Frontierland being themed around general American wilderness, which then stands to reason that a bayou would be included as well. But you know what? I'll bite. I can see that a mountain covered in lush vegetation contrasts heavily with a neighboring mountain that looks arid and weathered, but then I'll say that Splash Mountain had the exact same issue beforehand.
Dear #Disney at Disney, your insistence on retheming #Save Splash Mountain is most disappointing. Even if a retheme were proper, you didn't even get the right character. Pocahontas would have actually fit the land. @Robert Tiger Woke is evil.
Oh, okay. So anyways, I should also discuss the elephant in the room. It's the same fucking ride. At the end of the day, most normies ride the ride to experience the thrill of dropping down 50 feet over a waterfall, not because of some 1940s cartoon rabbit's plight against the dreaded fox and his dim-witted sidekick bear. The basic ride system is the exact same. The same straightaways, the same drops, the same water features, the same general set design, barring some changes to the set dressing, the same queue area, the same walkway in front of the ride. Literally everything that makes this ride what it really was is still there. All that's changed are the characters, story, and music. Actually, let's discuss the differences between the stories. One of the major talking points against Tiana's Bayou adventure is the story being worse than Splash Mountain. If you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you should understand that I don't believe a simple story is inherently worse than a more complex story. Would it be less intriguing? Sure, but that's an entirely subjective argument to make. One that I'm not going to weigh in on since I don't think my personal interests are all that, well, interesting to discuss. Splash Mountain was the retelling of the animated sections of Song of the South, starting with the first scene of Brer Rabbit being chased by Brer Bear and Brer Fox while he ran away from his home to find the laughing place. They very loosely adapted the Tar Baby scene because Jesus fucking Christ, and merged it with the scene at the end of the animated portion where Brer Rabbit tricks Brer Fox and Brer Bear into getting attacked by bees. They shuffled things around a bit and put the scene where Brer Fox has Brer Rabbit tied up right before the scene with the thorn bushes, and both of which occur before the climax with the bees. So as a faithful adaptation of the alleged beloved classic that 99% of the people who claim to love it but clearly haven't seen it, it's a failure on that front. That being said, I don't really think a ride has to be a faithful retelling of a film. However, if someone's issue with the ride being changed is due to their alleged love of a film they've never actually seen, newsflash, it barely resembles the film itself to begin with, thus burying that notion real quick. I also feel it prudent to bring up how the same line of thought this should mean that it's fine for the new ride to tell an original story, right? That means it's fine that it's a sequel rather than a direct retelling of the film, right? Like, would it have been cool to hear Keith David singing as he went up the lift hill before the drop? Hell yeah! And I'll be sure to listen to Loser Baby on repeat to compensate for my feelings of grief over that fact. But I think it's fair that they chose to do a different story for this ride rather than doing some amalgamation of a pre-existing story in a pre-existing ride building tailor-made for a fundamentally different story. Sometimes you just have to look at what the intention of a story was and look at how effectively they communicated it is, rather than just disagreeing with the premise outright. It's kinda just the fair thing to do if you're consuming any piece of media, except what the intention was and criticize or praise the execution. That's kind of the whole MO of my channel. The news story is that of Tiana trying to assemble all the best animal musicians from the Bayou to perform at her Mardi Gras celebration. So she's going around recruiting different animals of all shapes and sizes, and the climax of the ride is seeing how the celebration came together. Seems simple enough, especially since most theme park rides have very similar plots. Hey, our haunted house is having a party. Oh look, it's a party. Hey, come take a grand tour of this river on a boat while our tour guide is making cheesy jokes. Oh, we're just gonna go see the religious ceremony of a tribe of aliens. This basic setup and payoff type of storytelling has been part of Disney parks for a very long time, so I'm not sure why Tiana's Bayou Adventure having a simple story is such a hot-button issue. Hell, my favorite ride ever, Pirates of the Caribbean, tells most of its story through subtext rather than formally explaining what's happening. You go through the skeleton cave implying the fate of all pirates, and you're sent back to see them in their heyday. Nothing too complex, but it's remained a classic. Now I can understand, some people just have a preference for the story of Splash Mountain, with the building tension through each cat and mouse scene as the characters are getting to slapstick antics, but in a conversation of quality, you really can't compare rides that are inherently trying to achieve different concepts. One is a slapstick cat and mouse chase, the other is a build-up to a party. If it's not an issue that Pirates of the Caribbean consists of smaller vignettes, it logically follows that Tiana's Bayou Adventure should also be allowed to have a story consisting of small vignettes. One thing I will somewhat agree on is the criticism of disconnection between said vignettes, in particular during the climax. The lift hill is unthemed, barring the Mama Odie animatronic right before the drop. Now, I will admit that section was unthemed in Splash Mountain, but the purpose of that lift hill was to build up the ominous threat of Brer Fox and Brer Bear, while here it's supposed to be a shortcut to join the Mardi Gras party in the finale. The scene right before this is where guests have been shrunk down to the size of fireflies to recruit their best musicians, and Mama Odie grows the guests back to their normal size during the lift hill. The change I'd make would be including smaller scenes to showcase the change in perspective. Like, maybe at the bottom of the lift hill, they're human-sized fireflies, but as you get closer to the top of the lift hill, they're different animals of the bayou increasingly getting smaller and smaller. Another change I'd make that I'm frankly astounded they didn't include was more of an anticipatory mood for the scene after the drop and right before the finale. You know, the perfect song that would play in a scene where you're itching for something that's just over the horizon. The song that's basically the go-to song most people think of when they think of Princess and the Frog. An inspiring and catchy song that everyone can relate to. One they play an instrumental of, but for some reason don't include the lyrics for. The song that literally has the lyrics, I've climbed the mountain, I've crossed the river. Almost there. Yeah, for some reason they didn't use a version of the song with lyrics in the perfect scene to play it. I'd even go as far as to say it's a big missed opportunity to not have some smaller animal animatronics like frogs singing it right before the finale, making the falling action of the story hit far harder. And on the note of music, I'd like to bring up another really weird talking point, how the new song in the climax isn't as catchy or classic as Zippity Doo-Dah. I think it's fair to say that this criticism is kind of insane considering Zippity Doo-Dah has played on the ride for 30 years and this new song has a few weeks of life to it. Maybe wait a few decades before you write something off as not being a timeless classic, because for all you know, there are kids right now who will grow up with the current version of the ride who will have tons of nostalgia for the songs on it. To call this criticism premature would be the understatement of the century. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. I think some of the criticisms of Tiana's Bayou Adventure are valid, but not exclusive to this ride at least, but the bulk of them seem to be coming from a place of extreme bias for Splash Mountain, which makes it really hard for their arguments to be taken seriously. Criticize whatever you want, of course, but keep it consistent and don't arbitrarily make excuses for things in a piece of media that you like that you would otherwise consider a flaw. Standards are pretty cool, and I encourage anybody to consistently apply them to anything they experience.
That's it right there. Every time I bring up a fucking subject, you know all about it.
I don't know all about this.
You fucking know all about this shit.
So anyways, that's it for today's video. Feel free to like and subscribe, comment down below what you think of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Actually, I shouldn't even have to say that because I know I'm gonna get yelled at, but I'll enjoy the engagement boosting my video in the algorithm. Get got, fuckers! Anyways, feel free to join my Discord server or donate to my channel on Patreon to get your name listed in the credits of my videos. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.